Hi, everyone. I'm Dave.
And I'm Jeremy.
Welcome to our podcast, Tech Over Coffee. We are so excited to talk about tech based and business based topics. And we're very excited to film from Chipole's College studio in Marianna, Florida. And we're very thankful to the college for this opportunity to look at key ideas, topics, concepts that apply to the bachelor's programs, associates, certificate programs, and just these important business tech based topics that kind of cut across all disciplines, really. I mean, we look at finance, we look at entrepreneurial concepts, so important stuff, Jeremy.
Yeah, it's all of these things that are actually affecting us on our daily lives, even if you don't really think about it. And some of these things are pretty broad, but today, what I think we're going to focus on is three particular topics of interest to me, at least.
Oh, me as well.
So, first off the docket is I think we should talk about Tesla being added to the S&P 500.
Elon, wow, I just saw something recently. It was a TED talk that he provided before the COVID outbreak. I don't even know if they've had a TED talk since. Maybe they did one through a Zoom meeting. Who knows? But his focus on technology was you need to keep pushing yourself. You need to keep encouraging innovation, or it'll just decay. His examples were, the ancient Egyptians with the pyramids, how that was a great technology, and it kind of just fell to the wayside. And then the Romans with their aqueducts, with their ability to provide water to manage that, and it kind of just fell to the wayside as well. So he says technology by itself will do that. You got to keep pushing, you got to keep striving, and he demonstrates that with so many activities.
Yeah, you have a lot going on in that sector, and for this in particular, it's really good because the S&P 500 is this index of the 500 biggest and best companies in the market, and that affects the flow of money across the whole market, really, because now you have other indexes that are going to follow suit, and they're going to reallocate their funds, bringing in Tesla. And this is actually really big because it's the largest inclusion that the S&P 500 has ever done. Because Tesla is a huge company at this point. So to do that, they're going to remove another company, which hasn't been named yet. I wonder who. That's gonna
Any
be.
thoughts?
I have no idea. I mean, maybe look at who's number 500 and knock them off the list. But I mean, Tesla is so big that they're going to be up in like top 10
Oh,
categories.
yeah,
I think,
top
right?
50 for sure, I would
Yeah,
think, yes.
I think the top 10 currently, I don't know the total top 10, but I know it's like Apple, it's Intel, it's Microsoft, those kinds of companies. Amazon, Google, Alphabet, I think is how they're considered on the market. But so that's really huge, and it's already affecting the stock price.
That's right. I mean, Tesla stock has really increased over the last few months, last couple of years. And going back to Elon and just technology of just pushing the envelope, with that TED talk, he was talking about how it just doesn't happen. You can't just have a good idea. It takes a lot of hard work for these technical gains to be achieved. And
Yeah.
he demonstrates that in so many ways. I think he responded in that TED talk to about space exploration and the boring companies, other things that he does that taking a risk, testing out ideas help him with his car company. There
Yeah.
are some connections.
Yeah, there's always some like plays happening between each, right? With SpaceX, you're making moves towards changing types of metals and different production ideas. And it's stuff that is cutting edge and something people haven't done before. I mean, even the idea of like taking a battery, making it part of the structure of the car, and having this whole thing be just a few different casts of metal rather than like individual pieces. That's innovative, and it cuts costs and makes things easier to achieve in the future. That's pretty good.
And what a huge accomplishment for the S&P 500. Wow. Elon is living the dream, and he's really changing the marketplace, almost as Henry Ford and others have done years gone by. I mean, Elon's making a difference.
Yeah, and that's how you move the market forward as well, right? Because you need to take and really establish that the large, big companies that are making money in innovations, right, should be put into these indexes because that actually keeps the market moving forward for everybody. Because if you're just keeping every laggard on, then the whole market doesn't really function as well, right? Like you can't have I don't know, a GE or something like that might not be making any money, might not have made any money for years now. How can they, be dragging the rest of the market down? It's why you have to drop the losers and pick up the winners.
GE, wow, what a great example. They were the ultimate blue chip company, but not so much anymore. I was trying to think of that term laggard. Boy, I don't know if there's any good way to spin that term, but what a great way to define those.
It is what it is, right? It's the
Right.
people that have fallen behind and they can't really catch up because the
Yes.
people that are out in front are way too far ahead. And I mean, talking about S&P 500 inclusions, right? So you've got a nice big company, Apple, that's made a move that I think is really good for the market. They decided to drop their fee structure from a massive 30% from their app store, like taking huge amounts of money from developers' pockets. And they're reducing it for any developer under like $1 million gross, which is really good. It's small developers, I think is what they call them.
So that is kind of coming late. I don't know where they're feeling the pressure at, but that is a positive move that Apple's doing. Early on with it, it almost seemed inappropriate, right? They're enticing developers, making money off of their hard work. Developers didn't really have a lot of opportunities, a lot of places to go. And so they had to take advantage of what little opportunity they had. Apple provided that, but made money off of their work. So now it's a positive
Which,
step.
in the beginning, right, with the fact that the App Store is kind of this only place to go, and I mean, part of this is pressures, I think, from people calling out monopolies, right? We have people that are looking at a walled garden like Apple's App Store, and you've had complaints from competitors or from people that are trying to not even compete, but be on the marketplace with them. Particularly Epic Games. We've talked about Epic Games before, and their approach has been the same sort of thing. They've gone against Steam, who's got a similar marketplace where they charge a large percentage, and Epic has come in, cut the fees by a large percentage, and just to like show people, hey, these guys are taking a lot of money. And they had this problem with Apple recently, where Epic Games was actually banned from the App Store because they allowed people to pay Epic Games directly and just cut out Apple's fee. But now, I mean, I don't think Epic Games would classify as a small app developer, but for a lot of people now, it's going to be 15% instead of 30, and that's huge because that's a lot of money that can go back into small developers' pockets.
So it could be that the current environment in the marketplace where companies, individuals are hurting. So maybe that's a nod to kind of just help people out there in general. Just say, hey, come on, bring your ideas and let's win together instead of trying to make a larger profit. So maybe just the dynamics of the marketplace today have impacted Apple's decision.
And maybe that, is a reaction to competition, right? Because you have more competitors out there. You have the Google Play Store, which they take a large percentage as well, but it's not as large as Apple's. And so maybe you instead just only make an app on Android instead of Apple, instead of on an iPhone or what is that called? It's the iOS operating system. I don't know. I'm an Android guy. I'm sorry.
Right.
But doing that and then trying to avoid allegations of monopoly type behavior and non-competitive things as well. And they make a lot of money anyway. They've made massive amounts of money from the App Store. So cutting that back a little bit can actually just help them maintain their lead position.
Right, and maybe they're kind of stepping back and seeing what's happening. Have other CEOs are being invited to DC. I don't think really for vacation, right?
No,
So maybe they're
no.
trying to avoid that same invitation.
Yeah, so that's our third topic, right? It's moving into a little bit of politics. So we've had Senate hearings with big tech companies, and the two in particular, the big favorites, are Twitter and Facebook. So you had Jack Dorsey and Mark Zuckerberg not actually in Washington because of all of the...
That's right, they were Zooming or something similar,
because
right?
of all
Yes.
the COVID and everything else in the world and people being a little worried, they were actually doing online meetings, which is good. You did have some senators on the floor. I saw Ted Cruz, Dick Durbin, a few, ask some questions, and some pretty pointed questions too, to both CEOs about how they're controlling their platform. And are they just a platform or are they publishers? Because they're worried about false information getting out there, the fake news, and they're worried about censorship. And some good questions were also even put up on Are these things addictive? And you had two starkly different answers come from Mark and Jack Dorsey. Jack Dorsey of Twitter says, I think they probably are. Mark Zuckerberg says, we don't really have the data on that. So I wonder who's the robot.
It's interesting when you look at Mark's response and Facebook. For many, just in the general population, Facebook is the portal to the web. When you talk
For a lot of
about
people, yeah.
on the internet what activities, let's look at something, and they go through Facebook. Is their entry point to the internet, if you will. And boy, I wonder how Al Gore would have felt about that back in the day when he invented the internet. If
Yes,
Facebook was-
when he alone invented the internet and
Right.
saved us from global warming or something, right?
we had to bring that in since it's a political
It's,
theme.
it's
Yeah.
always kind
Yeah.
of fun,
Yeah.
right? I mean, the internet being the series of tubes that it is. Uh, but in these hearings, you do have serious questions being brought up of like, are these platforms, which are now really making a bigger move to try to open up the discussion. They're trying not to allow people to just spin completely false information as if it's true, but that can be viewed from the people giving that other information as like, well, are you editorializing? Are you stepping beyond what your rights are as just like a platform? Are you becoming more like a newspaper or something like that? Which is, in my opinion, kind of hard to claim because Twitter doesn't have control over what people post. They can go and try to combat bots and things of that nature, but even Jack Dorsey said himself that bots are actually kind of acceptable in Twitter's case because some bots are useful. You want a bot that gives out nice information, that like some stock tweets or something like that.
Updates on the weather, that's
Yeah,
timely.
right, something like that, but definitely not a team of Russians trying to, rig the election.
So, interesting times. Tech companies originally, to help encourage the growth, the creativity, the innovation, were kind of given a pass that they weren't treated like media companies. And so now the thought is, well, how is it different? And so these are important conversations. I would say they are different, but it's still worth discussing, I guess.
Yeah, oh yeah, and you need to bring up a lot of things, especially with these big tech companies that have more and more control over a lot of aspects of our life, right? And you don't necessarily need to regulate them out of existence or possibly regulate them into a position where no other competition can come up too, because that is a concern. Because if you go and add regulations now based on what you have, you could possibly exclude other people from coming in and doing the same thing that they did to begin with. And these are platforms of people and groups posting things that they want. It's like a free speech issue. And really, a lot of the internet, in my mind, is built upon aspects of free speech because it's all just information being transmitted from people to people. So to go and try to basically ask Twitter or Facebook, you need to control and stop people from being able to say whatever they want, I don't know if that's the best move.
Right. I mean, these are originally technologies that have just become so successful that people are using them to share information, using them as media outlets. I don't know if that was their original intention. That was just a way to leverage technology for fun, for a good, just to help their friends and help,
right.
Those in the marketplace, say, maybe some businesses. And they just have really taken off and been uber successful, if you will.
And there are secondary markets being built on top of it, right? Because you have all of these people in this same area. Well, isn't that a great place for a business to contact someone over something? Then you get into advertising and customer targeting and things of that nature where, if you're just here for friends and family, but you're also being constantly berated to buy the next best thing, is that the best outcome? Or should that be possibly tampered down? Or I don't know. It's a lot of things to be looked at for sure.
If you put restrictions in now, as you were alluding to, Jeremy, it could impact future tech opportunities. And so businesses that are going to bring the new wave of innovation could be stifled. How do you manage that? It's almost better to take a step back, possibly, and to let technology be technology.
Yeah, let it sort itself out a little bit, because some of these things, if you try to control some aspects of the internet, what you do is you have people just move to a different platform. So if you make some regulation that's specific to Facebook or Twitter, it's why they can't name this law the Facebook Twitter Act, and specifically say Facebook and Twitter must control what people say. Well, then they move over to some, new Facebook or new Twitter that someone else makes in China or wherever else. And that's some of this too, is that you need to have the regulation open enough that we don't have these tech companies trying to move to another country.
That's
where
right.
we don't have any command over this.
And a great way to come kind of full circle, if you look at the indices, something I was kind of glancing at for our discussion today, the U.S., the NYSE, the Nasdaq still are world leaders in how they're performing. So we want to maintain tech companies starting here, continuing here. So the chance to go back to how it was a few years ago, where we had more IPOs starting in the U.S., would be a great thing. I mean, now there are some that are seeking the UK, Hong Kong. So to keep that innovation creativity here, there's value with that. So that is an important balance for our lawmakers.
Yeah. But it's interesting too, because at the same time, you have foreign companies looking at the U.S. as being the place to do their IPO because it's easier, it's a better regulatory framework, a bigger, wider swath of people that would be interested in actually putting capital in on something. And that is the benefit of the U.S., is that it's a stable country, right? Pretty stable as far as I know. As long as I've been here, it's been pretty stable.
I would echo that. Yeah, it's very stable. Yes.
Right. So, and to have big tech CEOs being brought up on questions of these things is it's just a sign of the evolution. Because I remember at one point when, the joke, it's just a series of tubes, right? What's that?
Right.
What's that E on the desktop mean? And now it's you actually have them up and asking real pointed questions to these guys that are just the head of this kind of behemoth. And some of these questions are on things that the CEOs don't even necessarily know, right? It's a question of what are these employees doing in this massive organization? I mean, it's huge.
Yeah, and as we kind of maybe plan for a future talk, it's important to understand the influence of technology on the marketplace, on financial indices. The challenge in the future could be this hodgepodge of, if you look at Elon, where you have space and you have auto and you have some other technology, when you have just these disparate entities all part of this overall company and they gain some competitive advantage that we can't even see, I think it's going to head more that way, where it's going to be more complex, and so that might be something for us to look at in future discussions.
Because it's not really like the business of today is definitely looking to be more vertically integrated, right? Because having a company that is just, I make motors and I sell my motors to this company and they piece it all together, it doesn't really work out the same way. You don't have as many specialized companies, not in a large fashion at least. I mean, you can have specialized companies, but they tend to be smaller, and they seem to be getting smaller, versus now these big companies that do everything themselves. It's why Tesla does a lot of what they do, is that they have to make all of these parts themselves so they don't have to depend on anybody else. And that's kind of an important point, right? Because if you're dependent on too many other outside factors, then that can throw your whole business for a loop.
Wow, some great topics, Jeremy. Really engaged our discussion. So I'm excited to see what you'll have for us next week, or maybe the week after. We do have a holiday coming up.
Oh yeah,
so
we've got Thanksgiving, right?
Yeah, we have a lot to be thankful for.
Good way to time us. And yeah, I'm very thankful for you, Ben. You're not Ben. Well, I am thankful for Ben. Ben out there listening. I'm very, very thankful for you.
That's probably one of the best compliments I've ever received.
Yeah,
Thank you, Jeremy.
Dave, I'm happy to be here.
All right. Till next time. Thanks, Jeremy.
Bye.
Bye.